most afraid of the Munchkins. Is that the name? Yeah. The Munchkins. There's something wrong with those little guys who are just kind of jerk and sing. And you know, I have never wanted to rewatch The Wizard of Oz. I have never sat down with my grandkids and put that crazy thing in. I'm not against it, but I'm just saying. But you know, in one particular part there in The Wizard of Oz, you have Dorothy and the Tin Man and the Lion and the Scarecrow finally make it to Oz. And they still got a long journey to take care of, but they have finally made it to Oz. Of course, they come into that great cathedral-looking temple thing, castle thing, and there is just smoke and this loud voice and trembling and shaking and all kinds of, you know, scary things are going on. And you watch the Tin Man's rattling and the Straw Man's trying to pick himself up off the floor, and the Lion is run off in the corner someplace trying to find a place to hide for his lack of courage. And they're just mesmerized by what they're hearing and seeing and what's taking place around them. And then, is it Toto, the little dog that goes running back behind the curtain? And of course, there is this little man, this little unimpressive little man who's sitting at this contraption, and he is making all this smoke and noise, and all these things happen, and his voice has been, you know, magnified hundreds of times. And, you know, they realize, wait a minute, we thought we were getting more than this. And they pull back the curtain, and there is just, and he's trying to, so you got the idea, right? So let me ask you this. Is it possible in mine and your life, and as we come to this holy God, when you pull back the curtain, who do you find? I mean, who do you see? Who do you encounter in that experience? And the answer to that question depends on other questions. Is God the central driving force in my life? And so when I pull back that curtain, am I finding someone who I exalt, someone who I focus on, someone who is the center of my life, that I would label as my everything, my go-to? There's no one else, there's nothing else. Nothing else exists, ultimately, but this incredible God. Is when you pull back the curtain on your life, is He that central, driving, powerful figure in your life? Or is it someone or something else? If He is, are you jealous? Are we jealous for the sake of His name? In Romans 1:5, Paul has that great statement. He said, I've been called for the obedience of bringing the Gentiles into the kingdom for the sake of His name. Are we jealous for that name? Are we troubled when it remains unknown? When most of the world remains lost? Are we hurt when it's ignored? That name, this God that we hold in esteem? Are we indignant when that name is blasphemed by a world that just offers rejection to the God who came and breathed our air and walked our soil? When you pull back the curtain, are you God-centered, Christ-exalting, Spirit power? Is that who we are? Is that who the world sees us as? I fear that in our boldness to proclaim something, that there is a blandness in our hearts and our lives for the sake of that name. of lifting that name, of magnifying that name in our lives. When the world looks at you, when the world looks at me, when the world looks at us, when the world looks at the church, is that what they see? When they pull back the curtain that we are introducing them to and saying, we've got it, we've got him, we've got the Creator, we've got the sovereign God, we've got the imperial prince of the kingdom of God. Do they believe that? They look at our lives and they say, boy, there's something, there is a God, there is a power, there is a presence that is tangible in their lives. Is that what people say about us? Is that what they say about, is that what they say about me? I would like it to be. But if we're honest with each other, quite often, even as my wife is giving testimony this morning, and when she says something like that, I want to rebuke her sometimes. Because my opinion of her is she's one of those godly women. I look at her and I say, God, can you make me more like her? And sometimes maybe that's our problem. That we are so enamored, we're so focused on each other, that we forget the God who is behind the curtain in some sense, who's just out of sight. And it's easy to get caught up in us. It's easy to get caught up in the motions of this thing called faith, of religion. It's easy to relegate it to just being a religion. And it's easy to just make it a feel-good obligation, need to do, should do, want to do, service to a king that I wish I was a little bit closer to. Let me make a statement to you this morning. That worship transcends the Great Commission, as important as that is. There's a lost world waiting out here. They need Christ. But the Great Commission is not as important as worship. Lostness, brokenness for losses, brokenness for sinners, does not precede worship. Worship transcends our heart, our desire to see other people saved. Worship is above and beyond that. Because we need to understand that, listen, missions exist because worship doesn't. And it all hinges on this thing called worship. And listen, let me give you just a simple, pointed definition of worship. Worship is just simply standing in His presence and realizing that I am standing in His presence. You have Gideon out on a middle of the night, standing on a hillside. And he's heard the heart of God. He's heard the direction of God. And he's getting ready to come down into that Midianite camp. And with all the terror and the fear of that could take place, Gideon has realized that there's something greater than himself standing on that hillside with him. There is an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-seeing, all-able God who's going to go down in that camp ahead of him and is going to take care of everything that needs to be taken care of this 120,000 plus army and these 300 guys standing there in the dark with torches and trumpets. And Gideon gets himself in a place that he realizes that this isn't about him, that this is God, and he realizes that God is there. And God's available, and God's going to do this. And the Bible simply says in Joshua 7:14, Gideon worshiped. Gideon worshiped. And I could share other over and over again of Abraham lying on a desert floor with no one around. And lying in the dust, Abraham worshiped. Jacob, an old man in Egypt. Not quite sure what the future is, just knows that home is back there someplace, but here he is in this place. And even in those separated circumstances, Jacob saw God. He experienced his presence, and it says, leaning on his staff as an old man, Jacob worshiped. It all hinges on that. Worship is the fuel and the fire that motivates us in our service to God, whether it's for missions, whether it's just helping someone, it's reaching out to someone, it's encouraging someone. Do you ever wonder in our lives why more of that does not take place? And will never take place? We have to come back to a place that God becomes the center of our existence, our lives. And that we seek Him with all of our hearts. And we're not hungry and thirsty. Nothing else will satisfy us. But just to get in His presence, and there is fullness of joy. Can I introduce to you this morning Eddie Anders, who is going to come and who has written us a song. He was sitting here writing it this morning when I came about exactly what I'm talking about. Eddie, come to share with us.
To bless your name. this life. I'll bless your name. With the love I give.
In Isaiah 40, verse 25 and 26, it says, "To whom then will you liken me? Or to whom shall I be equal, says the Holy One? Lift up your eyes on high, and see who has created these things. Who brings out their host by number? Who calls them all by name? By the greatness of his might and the strength of his power, not one is missing." God has decided to reveal himself to us through his word and also through Jesus Christ, through his spirit that indwells us, through his presence in us. And we have the incredible privilege, listen, we have the awesome, incredible privilege of not only being forgiven, but being covered by his grace and being able to have fellowship with this incredible God who has revealed himself to us, who has laid himself down so that we could take up Christ and live above our means. I'm not talking our financial means. I'm talking about live above who we are. Live far above more than we can ever imagine. And I fear that we have come to a place that all this has become so normal to us, so complacent to us, so ho-hum to us, that we have lost the presence and the power of God himself in our lives. I had a good friend call me. He's the chief judge for the appellate court of the state of South Carolina. He called me Saturday, was in town, and said, "Like to take me out to lunch. Listen, if you want to call me any day and take me out to lunch, I want you on the way." We sat down Saturday at Mudd's, and we talked for almost 2 hours, but I simply asked the question, do you think our nation is in best days are ahead or best days are behind us? And that started something. But in that, the truth that I kept coming back to, because he's a lawyer, but he's also a judge, and he deals with everything judicially, and that's the way his mindset. And he's a Christian, but he is so involved in that life and of dealing with people and their circumstances and their stuff and their fallenness, and trying to rectify, fix that judicially. And I had to continue trying to bring him back to be God-centered, because it's easy to look at folks in whatever situation they're in and try and make some kind of justification for them. They had a bad family life. They didn't have a dad. All those things are true, and all those things can, in some sense, come into play. But ultimately, the thing is that's why Jesus not only died on the cross for us, but he died to give himself to us, because that radically changes everything. And you see, it doesn't matter if I don't have to be an angry old man. My children my daughter, they bought a house, and so they have been living with us on somewhat of a regular. Then they'll get tired of us and they'll go home, and then they'll come back. But in that fresh encounter of being with us in the evening, they have said, "Mom and Dad, y'all just are cranky." And of course, we want to justify that. No, we're not cranky. We're just having serious discussions. But she's right. We're cranky. But you just sing. But the thing is, we don't have to live that way. If I've got anger issues, you see, the Spirit of Christ indwells me, so I don't have to live like that. If I've got sin issues in my life of pornography or something else in my life, or I just want what everybody else has, I want a bigger house and a bigger car, and I want what you have, I don't have to live like that. See, that's why the Spirit of Christ comes. But in the midst of that, the key to all of that is Christ's presence is available to us, but it's only as we acknowledge that in our lives, it's only as we embrace that, we embrace Him and we live for Him and we focus on Him that worship takes place in mine and your life. And when we're connected with Him, when we have focused on Him, when we really listen, we can't just ask God to heal us, and we can't just ask God to provide for us if we don't really believe that God will show up and He cares enough to do those things for us. And even to trust Him when He doesn't do those things on our schedule, or He never does those things. As the Hebrew children said, there's being placed in the furnace. We want you to know that even He can save us, but even if He doesn't, see, that's worship. That's faith and a trust. That is not just thinking about God, but that is a God who stands in front of us, and we are so connected to Him that we have embraced Him and He has embraced us. And there is now that joined at the hip, that there is not Him and us, and there's not this just His thought process, but we are now in His presence, and we operate in that way, and we allow Him to do in and through our lives what He wants to do. And He is so real to us that in brokenness, we fall on our faces before Him. In thirst and in hunger, nothing else will satisfy. We just want to get to Him. And so the question I asked myself this morning, the question I asked you this morning, is that where we are, or is that someplace we wish we could be? Well, ultimately, the answer to all of it is simply that. And I come back to the conversation Saturday. Whatever you are feeding on, whatever you are incorporating into your life. I mean, it's easy to be the tin man and the straw man and the lion. Sometimes we're brainless and we're courageless. Somebody look that up real quick. Google that. It's courageless. And we have no strength. Because we're feeding on everything but Him. We don't need to get to odds to get courage or to get a brain or to get strength. We just need to get to God. And so, what are we doing? What am I doing to get to God? Am I giving Him my time? Listen, there are no shortcuts. There is not a drive-through worship window at McDonald's or Hardee's or any place else. It just doesn't work. But when we get in His presence, Disney World does not compare. There is nothing that can stand next to Him. As that scripture I did, who can be like, who is like thee, God says? What can you compare me to? Nothing. And you see, most of the time we have not gotten that close to God. We have not come to that place in our lives of that He becomes our everything. And that He becomes our focus. And that He becomes our point of view. And we spend that time with Him. Listen, you can have hobbies, you can do, I'm not saying we don't do some things. But what I am saying is that those things have become preeminent in our lives. And we have relegated God to hiding behind a curtain someplace in our lives. And we're satisfied with just a little bit of smoke and mirrors and pop psychology and feel-good messages and just tell me, how do I make my marriage better and 75 steps to make me a better person. This is a hard message, folks, because what I'm trying to convey here is I'm a frail, flawed man standing in front of you this morning. And I'm trying to portray a God who I wish I really knew even more than I know, and who has failed tremendously at everything I'm telling you right now. And it's in that context that I have to believe that God is going to somehow or another speak into my heart and your heart, and He's going to reveal Himself in such a real and powerful way that you're going to leave from here, that we are going to leave from here changed and enamored and focused and believing that God is and who He says He is. And that is not a warm, fuzzy feeling that I'm trying to instill in you, but we are a people who have not come to the place of trembling and fear and in the presence of holiness and righteousness. And that's so intersecting and interceding in our lives that it changes us. Because what happens to us is we come in here, and quite often we're half prepared to meet God, and we just want to get a little tidbit, a little something to make me feel better, and give me just a little more energy so I can deal with my kids and my grandkids and my work and my wife and my spouse. And what God is trying to get us to understand through His Word is that there is so much more that's available. There's so much more way. There is so much depth to God that we have not mined, that we don't even understand. And we will never understand until we come to a place of just giving ourselves to Him, that He becomes everything in our lives. And we'll never come to that place apart from just standing in His presence. We cannot be satisfied on Sunday mornings trying to fill up our lives with God. If He does not permeate our lives all through the week, if we are not worshiping day and night, if we are not sensing His presence, if we're not incorporating Him into every circumstance of our life, then we are not worshiping. We're not depending upon Him. And we will never accomplish anything apart from worship. From really believing that this God is, that this God exists, and that this God is awesome and incredible and more powerful and real than we can ever imagine. And until we decide to live in His throne room, Isaiah 6, chapter 6, verse 1. I saw the Lord high and lifted up, and His train filled the temple. Until we live in that place, we will never accomplish what God wants us to accomplish. Your life will never exist in the realm that God wants it to exist. We will never experience the joy of the Lord as our strength. We will never change a lost world. We will never be concerned about lostness. We will never meet the needs of those around us by just wanting to, by feeling sorry or obligated. And so I ask us this morning, where are we in our worship experience? What is your expectation when you come into this place? When you get up in the morning, who do you expect to encounter besides family and friends and all the stuff that surrounds you? I find that sometimes I'm more interested in the news than I am encountering God. And we can get up and say, you know, God, I'm coming. But I tell you what, I'm just going to cut the news on right now. And I'm going to get online and I'm going to get check out everything that's happened in the world last night. And before you know it, that's all we're doing. And we become our focus. And our lives become our focus. And we stuck God behind a curtain someplace. We still want a little smoke and mirrors. We still want a little shaking every now and then. Just to remind us that He's there, as available as needed. And we miss these lives that God has called us to, that He has died for. Of experiencing Him. Of being broken before Him. Of Him so permeating our lives that our lives don't matter anymore. And we could give examples about that. I know that I want to get there. I know that I want to live there. But the thing about it is I can't. You can't. It's all about the choices we make. Talking to a gentleman this morning who has a heart and concern for someone that he's encountered who was sitting and didn't have anything to eat, and he asked, he said, you know, I want to go buy him a grocery. I want to give him a gift card that he can go down and fill up his plate with groceries, but he's got a drinking problem and a lottery ticket problem. He's hoping to get rich quick, so we can not just buy a pint, but we can buy a quart of it or a fifth. And you know, when you deal with somebody like that, the hard thing to say is, listen, offer them help. Don't give them money. Don't even give them food. Give them a choice. I'll come alongside of you, and if you want to not live where you are, but if you want to step out of that, if you want to change your life, and for it to be different, then I will help you with that. And if you'll embrace that, then life will change. And you won't be subject, and you won't be addicted to the things that you're addicted to right now. And you're going to find out, you just think that you want that bottle every morning. You're going to think that that's your life, and that's what is life all about. That's what life is all about. And I'm going to tell you, there's a better way. And when you break that addiction in your life, when you leave that behind, when you turn and go in the other direction of wholeness and completeness, you're going to find that a life that you just cannot imagine. A life that's not steeped in shame and guilt and regrets, but a life that's full and peaceful and meaningful and joyful. And everything I've told you this morning just comes down to this. It is a choice that I have to make and that you have to make. Who or what's presence am I going to stand in? What am I going to digest in my life? And if that is a person, if that is the God of the universe, if that is the Creator who loves us and gave Himself for us, then there is more waiting for me than I can ever imagine. And I will be more satisfied, more complete, more joyful, more at peace than anything that I have ever experienced in my life. Or I can let life roll on, and I can continue to incorporate the things of this world. And I'm not even saying most or a lot of those things are bad. I'm just saying they're substitutes for the real thing. God's the real thing. And if we will seek Him, if we will draw near to Him, He will draw near to us. And that changes everything in my life. That changes everything in your life. And you know, we want, what do we want? We want wholeness. We want peace. We want joy. And we substitute the lies of the world and the stuff of this world to try and placate that in our lives. And we buy into a lie. There's nothing. There's nothing like you. There's nothing that can satisfy. There's nothing that can take His place. So we decide, we make choices today. We're getting ready to make a choice right now. Do I want Him? Or do I want something else? Do I want to live a life of worship that will permeate my life, that will take me into His presence, and out of that I will live a life worthy of the kingdom of God that I've been called to? The God of the universe invites me to come this morning and to worship Him, to bow before Him, to stand before Him, to cry before Him, to be broken before Him, to seek Him and find Him. To want Him more than I want myself, and allow Him to live His life through us. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes and stand quietly? How's your worship this morning? Are you jealous for His name? Are you hurt when it's not proclaimed? Are you broken when it's blasphemed? Are you seeking Him with all of your heart? Has He been found by you in your life? Are you floundering this morning in a world that offers so much but produces so little? Has He spoken to your heart? I want to challenge you this morning. Even if you don't respond to this invitation by coming down to the front, that you're responding to this invitation in the depths and recesses of your heart, that God has spoken into your life. And you know you're not where you need to be. And maybe you're saying to yourself and being honest with yourself that there's not a whole lot of worship that takes place in my life. I come to church on Sunday and I sing the songs, and some of them I like, some of them I don't. I come to church on Sunday and I have to sit someplace special, or I'm hoping that someone will say something nice to me. Are you seeking approval from others? Are you seeking something in your life that only God can give? His presence. I want want to challenge you as you leave this place today to lay yourself before Him this week, to take time to worship. And listen, that may be as simple as and as difficult as going to your chair or going to a table in private and just sitting there and just trying to concentrate on God, reading His Word, sitting in silence, but focusing and just saying, God, I want to draw near to you. I want to worship you. Help me to understand what that means. But God, I'm seeking you. I really want to know. I want to give my whole life to you, not just bits and pieces. I want to live a life worthy of the kingdom of God that you've called me. At the close of this service, we have the prayer room straight back down these hallways. We will meet you in there if you have something you need to pray about. Maybe this morning you need to receive Christ. There's something we've said through His Word that you realize you don't have a personal relationship with Him. I invite you to come. Just head to that room back there and I'll meet you back there and we'll share how to receive Christ. Folks, the hour's late. I'm just talking about lunchtime today. And I'm talking about in many of our lives, the hour is late. I'm talking about in the life of this world, the hour is late. And we need to decide whose we are and whose we're going to be. And how that's going to play out in my and your life. And we need to focus on God afresh. Not be enamored by the things of this world. Father, we love you. We thank you that you come to us, that you still speak to us, and in your grace and in your mercy and in your great love for us, I pray that you will speak into the recesses of our heart, that you'll awaken us to you, who you are, your spirit, your life, and that we will completely partake of all that you offer us, of your presence and your power. And that we will be people who genuinely worship, who seek you, who lay ourselves before you, who want you, desire you above all things. Lord, only you can put that in our hearts. And I pray that you will refresh us by your Spirit and by your word. And take us to the place that you want us to be. That is in your presence. Every day, all day, throughout all our lives. I give you glory. Who else is worthy? May your name be praised through my lips and our lips throughout all this work. May they see Christ living and breathing in us. In Jesus' name. Amen. Garth has a quick announcement.
Just to let everyone know, we have our Wana Spring Fling. So we'll have inflatables, cotton candy, a few other things, hot dogs, hamburgers for free registration for Awana. Today at 5 o'clock at Lake Robinson. Thank you.